Did you know that you could actually play the best deck of the format in a budget version and still have it be competitive? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys my budget Paleozoic Tearlaments deck. I was recently experimenting with this deck. I really like the idea behind it, and of course, it's very budget friendly. Now, I know there are some of you out there who are looking at this deck and going straight to the comments like, oh, TCG Sam XYZ card is not budget friendly, and how can you say this is budget? Well, I will be having an extremely budget build at the very end, cutting out all but the bare bones necessity cards. Overall, the deck is still very budget friendly considering it doesn't play the field spell, it doesn't play too many expensive staples. So if you have a bit of an extra budget, this is kind of the build that I recommend. We're just going to quickly go over the deck profile and then we'll hop straight into the match. So starting off, we are playing 3 copies of Backjack. This card is very good. It's a great mill. Even if you have to start by normal summoning it, that's totally fine because this deck realistically doesn't have that many normal summons. It's okay if, for example, you draw like Backjack plus like another normal summon. It's not that big of a deal. You have ways to get either one into the graveyard, so it's totally fine. But milling Backjack's great because at worst it's a Tearlament that you guarantee to hit, so you can trigger it at any time. Or at best, you pretty much get access to pretty much every single trap card in your deck aside from Sulliek, which is really insane. And even if you stack the Sulliek and mill it, you still get a search. So Backjack is honestly one of just the best cards in this deck. 3 of all the tiers aside from Sheeran. You don't want to play 3 Sheeran. Sheeran is the worst one in this build because you don't have that many monsters, so you won't be able to use its effect in hand very often. Sheeran standalone is just the worst one. Like, you'd rather see either Havness, Merly, or Rhinoheart because they can all do something on their own, whereas Sheeran requires another monster. Yeah, it's nice if you draw Sheeran Backjack, but that's just not going to happen very often. And of course, wrapping it up, 1 copy of Instant Fusion. You notice there are a lot of traps in this deck, and that is kind of the idea of this deck. It's a trap deck, but without the degenerate floodgates. You have access to a lot of normal trap cards that do something in the graveyard, aside from like Needlebug Nest. But essentially the idea behind this deck, if you haven't thought about it already, is that all your mills are essentially going to have value in the graveyard. Even if, for example, you won't be able to use it right away. So for example, if you mill a Lost Wind, you won't necessarily be able to activate it that turn, but it's a resource that you have later on. And that just makes it so even when you quote-unquote miss with your Tearlaments and don't hit a Tearlament, you still get value in the graveyard. So we are playing all the traps pretty much to have effects in the graveyard. So Breakthrough Skill, triple. 3 copies of Breakthrough Skill, 3 copies of Lost Wind just for effect negation. They both have effects in the graveyard, so are really good. 1 copy of Pyrite Draw is incredibly good in this deck because it allows you to essentially trigger your Tearlaments any single time you have it in the graveyard or you have it set. It makes it so Tearlaments on the board become a disruption as well because you can fuse on your opponent's turn while getting a draw at the same time. Of course, there are many ways to send it to the graveyard, not only with Morella, Needlebug Nest, but like all your tier effects. It also makes it so you have a way to kind of clear your board if you need to play around a card like Mystic Mind. 3 copies of Needlebug Nest. It doesn't do anything when it's milled, but it's just so powerful because milling 5 in this deck pretty much guarantees, in fact guarantees you will hit something that has an effect in the graveyard. Because we only have 4 cards that don't do anything at all in the graveyard. So that means your Needlebug Nest is pretty much always guaranteed to hit something decent. So you definitely want to play that, not once per turn either, so that's pretty insane. And then 3 Canadia, 3 Dinomiscus, 3 Morella for the Paleozoics. These are just the best ones. You don't want to play Olenoides in the main deck because MST is just not that good. 9 is definitely a good number of Paleos. You get these bodies back on the board, and of course their effects on field are also just very powerful. Rise to Fly is probably what makes this deck actually be able to function. So the graveyard effect is you can banish 1 card, this card from your graveyard, then target 1 monster you control. Your opponent's monsters cannot attack for the rest of the turn except to attack that monster. So that just means if, for example, you target a monster on the board and then you somehow remove it later on. So for example, you have a Tearlament on the board, you target it with Rise to Full Height, you fuse away with the Tearlaments, your opponent actually just can't attack for the rest of the turn. Meaning your tiny Paleozoics survive and give you just infinite follow-up. Your opponent's also just not clearing the Paleozoics because they're unaffected by monster effects, so you can't really do anything to them without the battle phase. And then to wrap it up, 3 copies of Sulliek, just the best mill. Seeing it's also fine. It makes it so You have good discard fodder for something like Dino-Miscus, and even just like with a random Tearlament, it can be really good as well, just to supplement your Tearlament hands. But yeah, it's just a great mill that you always want to send to the graveyard, because you are lacking ways to get to monsters in this deck. That's it for the main deck. For the extra deck, 1 Mudragon, 1 Stapelia, 1 Kaleido, 2 Kakalos. It's pretty standard aside from the fact that we don't play Garura. I don't think you need the Garura, it doesn't come up that much, and the extra deck space is a tiny bit tight. You can definitely swap out the Mudragon for a second Stapelia if you want, but I like the idea of being able to recycle some of our dark utility monsters. For the XYZs, 1 Zeus, 1 Opabinia, 1 Totally Awesome. I think these are all you need. You don't necessarily really need Downerd. I feel like Downerd only ever comes up when you like specifically have a Toad with no materials. But at that point, I figured it's fine if you just keep the Toad on the board. So I decided to cut the Downer for some extra other cards in the deck. I think this is fine. The Opabinia is a really insane card. I don't think you need the one that pops one during either player's turn. Because if you have 3 level 2s, you just probably rather go for Elf or like a Toad or something instead. For the Link monsters, 1 Dark, 1 IP, 1 Elf. It's all pretty standard in Tearlaments. Nothing really to say there. 1 copy Unicorn for the IP and just the out stuff. Relinquish Anima is for when you hard draw a Backjack, but also like if your opponent doesn't respect it, you can also punish them whenever you hard draw the Backjack. 1 copy of Bomber Dragon. This card is really good with Elf and IP because now in this deck you have Paleo. So every time you activate a trap, you're able to bring back a Paleo, summon it under Bomber Dragon Zone, and then the Paleos actually don't die because they're unaffected by monster effects. So essentially Bomber can have like very, very, very many pops in this deck. And then finally 1 Underworld Goddess. This is not only a great budget tool in the extra deck, but also it just outs those problem monsters like IP, Avermax with IP, outs like the Ignister Towers. It can also just be really good with IP Masquerena as well, if you just have a bunch of Paleos on the board. So yeah, side deck very quickly. This is just what I thought would be the most bang for your buck. Just cheap hand traps like Nibiru and Dogwood probably do the most for you. Lava Golem to help clear boards, 2 Cosmic, and I think this is fine because you have an okay matchup into back row. You already have Dino-Miscus. If you want, you can cut like the Judgments for like Heavy Storm Duster or Lanoides or something. But I like the Judgment because it also prevents you from getting blown out in post-siding games against something like Lightning Storm or Evenly Matched. But yeah, without any further ado, let's just hop straight into the match and see how this deck plays. Alright, so getting right into the match, we do end up losing the die roll, so we're forced to go second. But I think this is just the perfect opportunity to show how even when going second, these normal traps can interact very well with your opponent to actually still help you play through their board. We're playing against Runic Sprite here. I'm just going to fast forward through their turn. They're just doing some standard Runic Sprite plays, starting with their Sprite Engine, grabbing Disruption through Smashers, summoning out Iperia. Iperia draws them into a Veiler, which is really good. And then Elf summons back a guy, makes IP, activates Tip, banishes the top card of my deck, sets 2 cards and passes. Sets Call By, sets Smashers, has a Runic Freezing Chains and Curses in hand. So Freezing Curses is essentially a effect Veiler. And then of course, he has to draw 2 with Runic Fountains. This is a very powerful opening for an opponent. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interactions plus a draw 2. So we're actually not in the best spot with just the Rhinoheart being our only play, but nonetheless, we're gonna try pushing through the board. He allows the Rhinoheart to go through, which is fine because he does have the Call By Grave, so he's gonna stop this Urine. That's totally okay. We just attempt to go battle phase or force out the Elf. Elf's gonna bring back Iperia. Iperia draws into Ash Blossom, so he has even more interaction now. We're gonna head straight into the battle phase, and after thinking about it, he's actually gonna do IP Masquerena in the end of the main phase. And I think that's definitely, you just kind of have to if your plan was to make Avermax. Makes it Avermax, and this is one of the problem cards that, if you saw the deck profile, you know we have a card like Underworld Goddess specifically for cards like this, because this deck does have trouble outing it. But you'll see, like, even when facing insurmountable odds like this, we're still going to be in a pretty good spot. We're just going to set 4 of our cards, keeping the Sulliek in hand as discard fodder for Dino-Miscus. Passing it over to our opponent. Our opponent's going to start with the copy of Jet that he drew for turn, special summoning it to grab Starter. Activating the Starter. In response to Starter, I am going to activate Dino-Miscus. The reason being, I just don't want him to summon Carrot, and then we have to we potentially have the opportunity for our Dynamiscus to get negated. Because, for example, if he summons Carrot, I try to use a trap, he Carrot negates, I chain Breakthrough skill. I know he has Smashers, so he's going to be able to smash us away his Carrot, and we're just going to be in a bad spot after that. I just really wanted to trigger the Solic right away and get rid of his Fountain. So that's why I do the Dynamiscus now. He ends up summoning blue instead of the Carrot. We end up grabbing the Havness. Our opponent grabs the Carrot. On resolution, before he summons Carrot, I try to Needlebug Nest. Our opponent hits us with the Ash Blossom, which is a little unfortunate. He special summons the Carrot, and now we have a very, very interesting decision. We know he has Sprite Smashers, and we know he has a Carrot negate. So what I do here is actually just Breakthrough skill the Gigantic Sprite, knowing that he's gonna Carrot. He's gonna Carrot negate it. Because why wouldn't you? You kind of have to. He's going to activate the Carrot to negate it by attributing the Hyperia. And then before he's able to use Gigantic, I am going to chain Havness first to the Carrot. Not only does this allow us to potentially mill some cards, but it also lets us get the second monster on the board for high rate draw. So I'm planning to use this high rate draw to essentially turn my Tearlament monsters into a disruption that'll actually be able to stop the Gigantic Sprite. Using Havness, we end up milling really good. We mill a Backjack. We did need to get a bit lucky here. We had to mill something that was really good, either a Tier Name or a Backjack. Hitting Backjack's incredibly good because now we're able to use Backjack to stack the top cards of our deck. Activate the Backjack just to reset the Needlebug Nest that we put on top of our deck. I'm doing this all before he's able to use Gigantic Sprite just because I don't want him to lock me into being only able to summon level 2s. Milling the top 5 cards with our Needlebug Nest, we do end up hitting 2 copies of Merly, a Solic, and a Canadia. So pretty below average mills. We do only hit the Merly and a Canadia because we already have used Solic. But as long as we hit the single tier name, like, it's fine. Because now Merly is going to be able to put itself back, and the other Merly to summon Kit Kalos. Kit Kalos' effect is going to activate. He's going to chain Runic Freezing Curses. And here's where a huge high rate draw comes into play. I activate high rate draw in response, chaining Canadia. Since it doesn't target, we're actually going to be able to use high rate draw to not only pop the Kit Kalos and our 2 Tearlaments, but we also pop one of our Paleos just for an extra draw. So since we pop 4 monsters, we get to draw 2 cards. And not only that, we also get to resolve our Kit Kalos, which searches Solic. And then we also get to trigger all the graveyard effects if we wish. We have Kit Kalos, we have Havness, we have Rhinoheart potentially if we want to. I believe I just end up using the Kit Kalos, sending the top 5 cards of our deck. And I am also using the copy of Havness, of course, putting itself back and the Kit Kalos and the Rhinoheart, summoning out Kaleidoheart, activating the Kaleidoheart on summon to pop the Gigantic Sprite, or shuffle it back into the deck. Our opponent Chain Smashers, he may as well because he's losing their Gigantic Sprite. And here's where the other effect of high rate draw comes in. High rate draw during the opponent's main phase, if it's in the graveyard, I can target one monster I control, destroy it, and then set this card. So essentially, not only does that allow me to dodge his Sprite Smashers, but it also allows me to trigger Kaleidoheart in the graveyard, which just goes to show how powerful a card like High Rate Draw can be in this deck. We do also chain Rise to Full Height on our Kaleidoheart, doing that interaction I mentioned at the beginning, where opponent won't be able to attack any of our monsters except Kaleido for the rest of the turn. I did forget he was under his Runic cards. It's whatever. It doesn't make that big of a deal in the end. But it's just another cool play. He does end up banishing the High Rate Draw with the copy of Smashers. We do bring back Kaleido with its own effect. Sending the copy of Havness to the graveyard. I decided not to use it. I don't think it's really needed. Our opponent just normal summons his copy of Veiler, goes to the Elf. I get to reset the Lost Wind because he does summon a monster from the extra deck. You can see how powerful these graveyard traps are. Just look at all the Paleos we have in grave. We have another Rise to Full Height so we don't die for sure. And we have 2 breakthrough skills that are going to be able to negate the Sprite Elf on our turn. So here he goes Elf into Hyperia. Doesn't really matter. He can't really do anything because he has gone through both of his Gigantics so far. And that was kind of a risk I was taking when making this play. I figured most decks only play 2 Gigantics, so he probably wouldn't be able to do anything after this. And I was right. He just passes on that, draws into Veiler, but that's not really going to be enough. I am going to activate the effect of my breakthrough skill to negate his sprite elf and in the draw phase. Normal summon the Rhino Heart, sending our tier to the graveyard. Summon the Kikalos, gets Veiler, totally fine with that. Make a dark with the Kikalos and the Canadia. Dark summons back the Gigantic, and then I use the Avermax for a copy of our Underworld Goddess, and our opponent just concedes from there because he knows we are way too far ahead. So you can see how we bounce back when our opponent had 5 interactions, potentially 6 including the Ash Blossom. So yeah, you can see how we, just with regular traps and our engine, we were able to play through that board. Going into game 2, we are going second again. Our opponent's going to start off with his sprite plays, also opening a very strong hand, I might add. He grabs Carrot, Specialist Carrot, Specialist Jet, Jet grabs another starter, overlays the 2 for Gigantic, Gigantic summons out Aperia, Aperia draws him Cosmic Cyclone, which is really good. Makes an Elf, Elf summons back Sprite Jet, and instead of going for Masquerade, he keeps the Spell and Trap Negate on the board, which I think is fair. So now we have to deal with a Elf giving him a draw or follow up a Carrot, so that's 1 interaction for Spell and Trap Negates. Starter potentially for a monster negate, so that's 2. 3 Cosmic Cyclone, 4 Call by the Grave, 5 Effect Veiler, 6 Ash Blossoms. We have to deal with at least 6 forms of interaction once again. We are once again going to start with the Rhino Heart. I think this is definitely correct because I figured if he just negates the Rhino Heart, that's cool. We can Dino-Miscus, discard Merly, and have a fusion play on our opponent's turn. He doesn't end up doing it. He hits us with the Call by again, second game in a row. Not much we can really do about that, but we just attempt to go battle phase to force the Sprite Elf. Sprite Elf effect is going to be able to summon back the Hyperia. Hyperia draws him into Smashers. I go battle phase, I swing into the Elf, just so he doesn't have that targeting protection, and from there we set 4 cards and pass. End phase, our opponent's going to activate the Cosmic Cyclone, which is going to banish our Lost Wind. So now we're left with 2 Needlebug Nests and a Dino-Miscus. So from here, he's going to summon the blue in the end phase. Blue grabs him a red. And now I know I have to do something before he's able to go to main and like summon the red, for example, because that's going to nullify our Merly. So what I do in the draw phase to start with Needlebug Nest, I figured, okay, he's going to Sprite Carrot negate. And then we can just Needlebug Nest on Resolution and just keep playing. But he hits me with the Ash Blossom. A little unfortunate. I decide that's fine. We can still do it. We just go Dino-Miscus, targeting the Carrot. I assume he's going to Carrot negate because why would you not? But he actually changed the Sprite Smashers, so really unfortunate for us because the Smashers just means that he's going to be able to banish our Needlebug Nest if we don't chain it. Of course, we chain Needlebug Nest, he just negates it with the Sprite Carrot and banishes our Rhino Heart instead, which means even if we discard the Merly, we're not going to be able to do anything. So unfortunately, we do lose that one, but there's not much we can really do when our opponent just draws a bunch of 1-ofs. Anyways, going on into the third game, we are going to start with a hand of Needlebug, Breakthrough, Happiness, Backjack, and a Merly. So a pretty okay hand. It's not the greatest because we do have a few extra monsters than we would have hoped. We do run into the problem I mentioned of drawing like 2 normals in Backjack and Merly. Totally fine though, because I think we just start with Backjack all the time here no matter what. We go Backjack, look at the top 3, we see Canadia, Morella, and a Lost Wind. In this situation, I think you definitely want to go with a card like Morella, because Morella not only puts a Paleozoic in the grave, but it essentially just grabs you any trap card that you could possibly want for the situation. So, for example, if you want a, let's say, a high rate draw to pop a tier on board or something, or dump a Suliek to search a copy of Happiness or something, I just think Morella can just offer you the most there. I believe that's the one I put on top. Or no, I decided to actually go for Canadia. So just scratch everything I said. I decided just to go for Canadia because our hand, I think I know what I was thinking. I was thinking our hand doesn't have that much disruption. We just want as much disruption as possible. End up just setting 2 cards, passing it to our opponent. Our opponent's going to draw for turn. Start things off with a Sprite Starter, summoning out the Carrot from the deck. And then from here, I know I have to deal with this Carrot right away. I just go straight into Backjack, Backjack setting Canadia. Canadia booking the Carrot, because this way I figured he has to commit his normal summon. As soon as he normal summons a guy, I'm going to Needlebug Nest, hopefully hit like a way to stop, get rid of his normal summon. And then from there, we are going to, if worst case scenario, like it doesn't happen, we have more chances with Havness, and if for some reason that misses, we can just break through skill to Gigantic. So that was kind of my line of thinking. Before it does normal summon the Sprite Red, activate Needlebug Nest here, chaining the copy of Paleozoic Tearlament to summon itself out. Needlebug Nest mills pretty good here, I can't lie. Hitting the Rhino Heart was huge because we do have the extra tier in hand, but also hitting Mischief for the Gnomes just makes it so our opponent just can't do anything with the sprites in his hand. This is also probably something I should have thought of before setting the Canadia, because for example, if I just had set the Morella sending Mischief for the Gnomes, I would have guaranteed after he started out the carrot that he just would have passed his turn pretty much. So a little mistake on my part. I definitely should have thought about it a little more, but we do get lucky to mill Mischief for the Gnomes and the Rhino Heart. Of course, he's going to negate the Rhino Heart because you are able to tribute the face down monsters. We do have the breakthrough skill, thankfully, to get rid of it. We are going to discard our Merly, and from here, we just pop off, shuffling away our 2 tiers for a copy of Kikalos. Kikalos is going to grab us a Rhino Heart for follow-up. And at this point, I know, like, he's pretty much not going to be able to do anything. I think, like, I think he probably could have just gone Runic Destruction, summoning out his copy of Hugin, the level 2. That's something I didn't consider, because I figured like at this point he just wouldn't have any plays. But I just totally forgot that like the Runics could have actually helped him play through it. So what I should have done is instead of adding the Rhino Heart, I should just dump the last Tearlament I didn't use, shuffle away the Kikalos in itself, and be able to summon out Dragosepelia. So that was a mistake on my part. He just decides to go for Runic Destruction. He just sets the Runic Destruction instead. So I guess we got a little lucky there. But yeah, I definitely should have just summoned Stepelia instead of searching the Rhino Heart. We draw Lost Wind for turn. Starting things off, we do link away our 2 monsters for a copy of Sprite Elf. This way we are protected from potential targeting effects like Veiler or Imperm or cards like his Freezing Curses. Starting with Rhino Heart. Rhino Heart dumping itself, dumping Sheeran. Sheeran put itself back along with our Kikalos. Kikalos effect is going to grab us a Merly. And then from here, I am going to special summon out the Merly and mill 8. We do hit a lot of good trap cards. We do hit the Breakthrough skill, a Sully to Surge. We hit a bunch of Paleos, and we hit the Backjack. Backjack is going to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck. And the top 3 are going to be Canadia, Morella, and a Backjack, so it's really good. This was like a bit of a... This is definitely a legal play on my part. I totally forgot Backjack could only be used during the opponent's turn. So yeah, that was definitely my mistake. I mean, I should have definitely caught it. I don't really have anything to say about this. We do make an illegal play here. A little unfortunate because this is actually pretty huge. This allows me to essentially just go off with this one trap that we're able to use this turn. But let's just say, for example, I didn't use the Backjack. I would be able to clear his board, link the 2 off for a copy of IP Masquerena. Then we have the Bomber Elf set up with a Lost Wind in that we can set. We have a Lost Wind in our graveyard that we can reset. We have a Hot Venus to trigger our Bomber, but we can also just keep pushing by like going Sheer and discard the Happiness. So just kind of ignore what's happening here. This definitely should not happen because we can't Backjack. So that's once again my mistake. I do apologize. My first time using these cards, but you do have an alternative place. I could have just went Sheeran, summoned itself, discard Happiness, just do fusion plays. So definitely something I could have done differently. So once again, I do apologize. Regardless, he's gonna Imperm our Elf. I chain Toad. He chains Callby 3rd game in a row. Cool. We are going to activate the high rate draw on the summon of Jet, popping our Rhino Heart, and this is going to allow us to trigger our fusion summon our opponent's turn by dumping our Sheeran. Sheeran puts back the 3 monsters for a Kaleido Heart. Happiness puts back the 2 for a Kikalos. Kaleido Heart shuffles back his normal summon. Kikalos, once again, another mistake here. I keep forgetting he has Runic cards in his deck, so what I should have done is just dump the last tier name, put Kikalos and the tier name back, summon Dragosepelia, And now pretty much no matter what his last set card is, I just win. So definitely a mistake on my part. Because now he just goes Runic Destruction, summons Yugioh, special summons blue. I'm forced to Lost Wind it because otherwise he just gets too much advantage. But you can see here, we were in a bit of a potentially dicey position had he, let's just for example, had plays past his one gigantic. So definitely should not have added Sulliek. Once again, my mistake. Just something good to remember. You don't necessarily need the Sulliek in this situation. You'd rather just guarantee your opponent can't play. He's just gonna go gigantic, summons out Hyperia. Here draws him blue, and there's nothing he can do. So he concedes there. Had he just gone for a card, he couldn't go for a card like Zeus because he was locked out of his battle phase with destruction. So essentially, for those of you who are saying, oh, you could just want battle phase made Zeus, no, you actually can't because of the runic cards. But yeah, we do take this one down. Hopefully you guys are able to see sort of the power of the this Tearlament build. And now I'm going to be going over my closing thoughts and showing an ultra budget build at the very end. Alright, so thank you guys so much if you made it this far in the video. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. If you've enjoyed it, be sure to let me know by leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. So I can keep making more videos like this for you guys. But yeah, this is the ultra budget build that I was talking about at the very beginning. So cards like Sprite Elf, I'm aware are expensive still, totally awesome, is still expensive. So this is kind of a build that I came up with. So essentially in the main deck, you just took out one of the Rhino Hearts and put a reinforcement in the army instead. Yes, it's not a perfect replacement because your mills will be marginally worse at times, but it essentially just acts as the third Rhino Heart, so you technically only need to play 2. In terms of the extra deck, I added in the Downard because Zeus is going to be more of a central focus for this deck. Now, because we don't have access to some of those powerful cards in our end board like Elf and Toad. Of course, I think we do still need one like quote-unquote pricier card in Zeus. You just need the board clear, unfortunately, with this deck. So we put in a card like Oni Maru Soul Sweeper just to facilitate access to the Zeus a bit easier. Otherwise, the extra deck's mostly the same. We took out the Elf, and we just kept the links the same. These are all pretty budget friendly. They're all very powerful links as well. I did put in the second Dragon's Paleo over the Mud Dragon. I figured in this build, you don't really care about recycling your dark monsters in the graveyard as much. So just the second Stapelia could just come up because you can put back the first Stapelia, or you can just put back Kakalos in order to make it. Now, you may have noticed that the title of the video was post Darkwing Blast. And yeah, I didn't forget about Scream's, Tearlament Scream and Lulucaros. But I just figured you don't necessarily need these in this deck. This isn't going to make or break the deck. But if you have access to Lulucaros, so for example, if it's like cheap, you can definitely just swap out one of the Stapelias for the Lulucaros, or in the first build, just swap out the Mud Dragon for the Lulucaros. Just a very good fusion monster that you have in your arsenal once again. Tearlament Scream, you don't really need in the deck. You could try it at 1 by cutting the reinforcement in the army, but I really don't think it's that great. I don't think it's needed either, so it's a good mill, yeah, but it isn't a trap card, so something to keep in mind. But yeah, essentially just a few changes to make it even more budget friendly. This should be well under $100 US. So pretty budget friendly considering what the meta is right now. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, once again, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you made it this far, I just want to thank you guys so much. It really does mean a lot to me. I hope you guys enjoyed this content. I had a lot of fun coming up with the different how to make this deck budget, because it wasn't my idea to begin with, like the Paleo tier deck, but I wanted to make it as budget friendly as possible. So the budget players out there are able to actually play Tearlaments and compete at like a tier 1 level. That's gonna do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.